Welcome to CareyBrosPros, the podcast for construction pros by construction pros, so you'll get the job done right the first time. Now, here are James and Morris Carey.
Hey, it's great to have you with us on this episode of CareyBrosPros, and as always, our goal is to help you keep up to date on the latest in technologies, techniques, and trends. Hi, I'm James Carey.
And I'm Morris. To help us learn more about modular homes, we're happy to welcome Ken Semler, the president and CEO of Express Modular.
Hey, Ken, welcome to CareyBrosPros.
Thanks for having me.
So we also understand that you're the national director for the National Association of Home Builders, and that you sit on the board for the National Modular Home Builders Association. Can you explain to our listeners a little bit about those tasks and what you do?
Well, I'm involved heavily in promoting the industry. So with the National Association of Home Builders, I'm a national director. I'm also the vice chair of the Building Systems Council, and so we promote the use of building systems. So instead of doing everything on site, we really try to promote modularization, panelized homes, SIPS panels.
Yeah.
On the Modular Home Builders Association, the real focus is on promoting modular specifically as a building system. And so in both those organizations, we really work to promote the industry, one more from an education and marketing standpoint, and the other one more from a regulatory standpoint.
Ken, how many national directors are there with the NAHB?
It's not that exclusive. There's about 800.
Well, no, I mean, look, that's 800. NAHB is a big organization.
Huge
and of
organization.
course, they have the International Builders Show that my brother and I have attended for many, many years, which is a very useful tool for those of us in the building industry to have a look at the latest and greatest in building products and technology. So we're pleased to take part in that. So what is modular construction? Let's talk about what modular construction is and how it can be compared to prefab or prefabricated construction.
Well, there's a couple questions in that. One is modular construction. People will say it's a modular home, but really modular home is a misnomer. It's actually a home built to local building code, but the plan is divided up into modules and delivered to the site. So modular is really a type or method of construction, not a type of home. Across the country, the terms prefab and modular, it's almost regional. You will see in the East Coast, modular is the term used for this type of construction, this method of off-site construction. On the West Coast and Western United States, you'll hear the term prefab. To get back into the real technical issues, really modular is an offshoot of prefabricated construction.
So when I'm driving down the freeway and there's a truck in front of me with a yellow spinning light and a truck in front of that with this sign on the back that says wide load, and there's a house on board, is that modular or prefabricated, or what is that?
That's a very good question. It's the industry has not been good to itself in that we create a lot of M words that are confusing and sound alike. So there are things that people call mobile homes or manufactured homes, otherwise known as double wide, single wides, and they're built to what's called the HUD building code, which is a federal building code. And there's a permanent trailer attached or chassis attached to the module, but again, it's built to a different building code. What we do is truly modular construction. It's a home built to local building code. It just happens to be built off-site, gets transported to the site, and lifted onto the permanent foundation with a crane. But again, when people see something just like you say, it's easily confused in the public's mind, and that's part of our education is making the public understand there's huge differences.
So can modular or prefabricated is different from manufactured or mobile?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
I wouldn't say prefabricated. I'd call it pre-assembled.
Mm-hmm.
I'd call it pre-assembled, but because a prefabricated home could be just a bunch of wall panels.
Which is part of what they do. Which is, I mean, a SIPS panels, as an example, would be a component that's used as part of a modular or prefabricated home? Yes or no?
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. We just happen to take more of the pieces and assemble those components, just like you're saying, panels or SIPs. They get basically flat packs sent to a site and assembled. I just do more of the assembly in a factory and deliver that home with the kitchen already completed, the flooring already completed, the drywall. I just do more of a complete assembly of that in a factory where I can control quality, hopefully get better purchasing power, and deliver a home of better value to the site.
Now, wait a minute. Hold on just for a second, Ken. You're saying that your system, and we're talking about Express Modular, your system is delivered to the project site with the kitchen cabinets already installed in that module?
Kitchens, bathrooms, tiled showers, flooring already done in the modules.
So does the plumbing have to be, the rough plumbing have to be added after the home is installed, or how's that work?
For the most part, it's completed in the factory. Everything that's behind the walls and brought through the floor and on site, we still depend on, say, a local plumber, but we're finished to a higher level. So the local plumber scope is much more reduced. We can complete it faster in the field. And so basically your lateral or horizontal runs for your waste and supply lines are connected in the field, but we've done most of the bulk of the plumbing already completed in each module.
So you normally get placed onto a concrete floor or a wood floor?
Usually we're going on to a foundation that's not a slab. We're usually actually setting our modules on a crawl space or a full basement.
Okay, so you're on a raised floor. Okay, I get that. Good.
Yep.
All right, next question. 1,500 square foot modular home.
Okay, that would be...
How much would that cost?
3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Okay.
3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
Single story.
1 story.
That answer varies widely based on the location of the country.
Small to large,
range.
whatever.
A range.
A range, and I'll say modular is most popular in the Northeast. The delivery to that site is going to be in the $60 to $70 range per square foot, and then you still have the on-site completion portion. But the factory delivery and set is about that price.
So, Ken, with Express Modular...
So what about the West Coast? You've got the Northeast. What about the West?
The West Coast, you're going to see that number be higher because of the higher labor rates and regulations.
Twice as high, or
it could be as twice as high. There are producers that really have high-end design, and that number could easily be 200 a square foot. But that's not your conventional house. That's a very high-end designed home.
So, Ken, with Express Modular, you indicated a moment ago that the modules are finished: the bathrooms, the tile, the plumbing, the kitchen, and we'll get into electrical in a moment and how this is done. And you mentioned a range, but we'll say $70 a square foot delivered. Then you have the assembly component, yes, that has to be added to that?
You have the assembly and on-site completion.
So does Express Modular have certified installers, or how does one go about finding someone to create the assemblage?
So from Express Modular's process, and there are different entities that have different processes in this industry, we always deliver the modules to the site, and we actually, with our subcontractors that we have great relationships with, we ensure the modules are delivered, set, and assembled and connected on the site. And that way, if it's a local builder or actually even an end-user consumer, we know that the modules have been attached and connected properly.
Now, that doesn't include the foundation and the floor framing, the floor joist, or the basement and all of that. That's got to be done. And then we have...
Wait a minute. He said the flooring was already in, so he must deliver the floor with the joist.
Does your floor... Yes. So your floor is part of your system? Oh, of course, it's got to be. You can't install cabinets without a floor. Okay, I've got that.
Or a kitchen or a bathroom.
Right. Got it. It makes sense. I've got to wrap my head around this. Okay. So, Ken, what are we looking at adding to that, just this broad number of $70? What are we adding for installation?
So your foundation is going to be whatever your foundation
Right.
costs in your locality.
Right.
And so typically it's going to be prepped and ready with a sill plate attached, ready for us to install. The site installation will just add a few dollars a square foot. And then depending on the level of finishes that need to be completed on site, and again, we're going to get into regional subcontractors because a plumber in New York the cost is very different from a plumber in Omaha, Nebraska. So that can also vary by region because now we've taken it out of the factory environment and put it into the locality. But you could add another $20, $30 a square foot to that price, depending on the level of finish in the locality it's going up in.
So would it be safe to say, Ken, and I know this, I don't want to back you into a corner, and I really don't, but I really want to give our listeners some idea. Would it be safe to say that land aside and site improvements, which include, utilities and that sort of thing, whether it's a septic or municipal sewer or well or water, whatever, but setting that aside, talking about foundation to finish, that something like this would be in the neighborhood of $150 a square foot. Is that reasonable?
I would say that's probably a good midpoint. And Indiana, that's probably high. And New York, that's probably low.
Okay, makes sense. So when you set your modules, do I then have to side the entire exterior of the building, or is it already sided as with SIPS panels, and then what I have to do is make some kind of a trim connection? What do I have to look forward to in the way of the roof? Do all the modules go in, and then the trusses are installed afterward, and then the roofing goes on? Paint that picture for us, will you?
So I'll start from the latter part. Once the modules are assembled, once the modules are placed on the foundation with a crane, we actually create a roof assembly that's much like a child's transformer toy or origami roof. The roof is hinged, but it lays flat on top of the modules, and depending on the roof design, it gets lifted by the crane. The eaves are usually hinged. They flip over to give us the eaves. We have the top flips, in essence, that give us the peak. We have what we call gable end panels that pull in to supply our gable for a gable roof. And shingling is mostly done in the factory. Everything that we can shingle in the factory, we do. So if it's on a fold point, we might leave off 3 rows. But so there's very minimal shingling to be done on site. And that's it, the same thing, or that same logic transfers to the siding. And so if it's a simple ranch-style home and it has a vinyl siding or a smart side or a Hardy product, we will actually have all the siding installed at the factory and on what we call the long walls. And where the modules go together, there's obviously going to be a seam when we don't want to have a visible seam. And so we typically ship inside the home the materials or the product for the on-site installation or the on-site finish crew to install. So if it's not put in at the factory, it's completed at the factory, or if it's completed on site with the materials provided.
So if I can find a place to homestead, I can build a house pretty cheap, or buy a house pretty cheap.
Well, at a better value than site building and much faster.
And that's the value proposition, which was the question I was going to ask.
Well,
why are we having this discussion?
Wait a second.
And what's the value proposition? And you just mentioned one of them. One is cost.
Uh-huh.
And the other, Ken, you mentioned is time, speed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that something that you're assuming that you didn't mention, which I think needs to be said, and that there are certain advantages to doing what you do in a laboratory setting, if you will, which is a manufacturing facility that could potentially turn out a more efficient, better built product. Is that true or not?
Well, think about it this way: we've, in essence, with modular, we've taken construction and turned it into a manufacturing process. So when you follow that logic through, we have larger purchasing power, we have concentrated construction, you have construction workers who don't depend on the weather for their paycheck. They get a 5-day paycheck, not a 3-day paycheck. The quality control is actually, when you do site building, there's inspections on the home for code. There's not quality inspections typically done in custom home building. And so this is the way that the factory is incented financially to do the quality inspections in the factory, because if they have to service it in the field, it's much more expensive. They want to make sure that the quality is built in at the factory. It's just a much better way to control it and construct homes today.
Well, I have one question, and that is I'm